Hello everybody, this is Jurassic Adventures, and today we'll be repainting this extreme Chompin Spinosaurus into a Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus. The goal for this custom is to make this the most accurate to the movie as possible, so trying to match all those colors and the look of the Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus and the animatronic that Stan Winston made the best we possibly can. And so for this custom, we'll be using this extreme Chompin Spinosaurus, this new one here. And I do really like this figure, but I think it is going to be sacrificed for customizing purposes this time around. So let's unbox this figure and start getting to work. Alright, so now we can get to customizing. So above the left leg and like sort of on the hip region, when the airplane is taking off and the Spinosaurus gets on the runway and snatches up Cooper, the airplane propeller grazes its sort of hip region and it creates a scar. So what I'm going to do to make that scar is I'm just going to sculpt it on with some green stuff epoxy putty. Alright, so the first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be spraying this down with some gray airbrush primer. The Spino is now primed, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this rock gray and I'm just going to go over all these scales in a dry brush. Now in the airbrush, I'm going to be spraying a little bit of this reddish gray mixed with a little bit of this grau, and then that's going to be our base color for all the darker sort of scales on the body. The reddish gray coat is now done, so now I'm going to move into sort of like a darker brown gray color, and we're just going to sort of pick out little scales and details to do in this color. The next thing we're going to do is mix some grau with some black and make sort of a dark gray color, and we're going to airbrush some more scales on there, just give it a lot of color variation. I now got the gray tone done, and we're going to move into more of a green gray. The green accents on the Spinosaurus are now all done, so we can move into the sort of stripe and lighter white gray patterning on the Spinosaurus that goes on the side of it, and that will be in rock gray, and we'll be using the airbrush at first, and then later on we'll be doing other things with brush. Now that we're done with that light gray stripe, we're going to move in to a little bit of accenting with some grau through the airbrush, and we're just going to highlight some scales and stuff. Here I'm just taking this grau color from before, and I'm painting in between the scales some little lines and stuff, because that is what is on the Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus. All those little stripes in between the scales and whatnot are done, as you can see, and that took a very long time, hours about, but now we can finally move into this red color, which is going to be medium rust, and it's a little bit of like an orangey red. Next color up is this dark brown, and we're going to use that to just do some simple patterning and little scales and details on the red. As you can see, all the brown details are done, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of yellow ink through this airbrush to kind of tie some parts together. For this next step, we'll be applying this Citadel Flesh Shade Wash into the sort of in between the scales and just along this whole red section. The wash is now done on the red, and so we can move into some of the sail patterns. First, we're going to be using some very dark gray. Now that the dark gray patterning is done on the spine, we can now go in with the center of these patterns with some blue gray. We're gonna move into a little bit of a lighter shade of that color. Alright, the sail is now all done, and we can move on to some other details. The first thing we're going to do is airbrush some brown ink onto the feet and onto the hands just to make them a little bit darker. Now that the feet are airbrushed, I'm going to move into the claws, and those will be black first and then dry brushed with this reddish gray. The next thing I'm going to work on is the scar, and this is pretty easy. I just got some flesh tone right here, and we're going to paint the scar, and then we'll do a wash over it later. The next thing we're going to do is the mouth, and once again I have another flesh tone here, and this one's just a little bit brighter, and we're just going to paint the entirety of the mouth in this color. For the final step on the mouth, I've mixed these two inks together, this sort of reddish ink and this brown ink, and I'm going to brush that onto the inside of the mouth. Now that the ink is done inside the mouth, I'm going to be painting the teeth with this grimy gray. For the next step, I'll be taking some of this brown ink and just airbrushing it lightly over the base of the teeth. Now we only have one more step left, and that is the eye. So what I'm going to be using first for this is this dark green called Greenskin. Next color we'll be using in the eye is lime green, and we're just going to make a pretty big circle in the eye. Now that the lime green is done, I will be doing little striations with a lighter variation of that same color. Now, with some black, I'm going to be doing the little slit in the eye. The black slit is done. Those required a ton of concentration, so I didn't really film them. But now we can move on to the last step, which is just a little white dot in the eye. And that's it for this repaint. If you guys enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. As always, this is Jurassic Adventures, and I'll see you in the next video.